Providence courtroom, February 28, 2018. Cameras rolling, gallery packed to capacity. A single mother named Maria Santos stands trembling before Judge Frank Caprio. $250 speeding ticket, 68 in a 40, school zone violation. Caprio leans forward with a question he's asked 10,000 times. Why were you going that fast? She breaks. My daughter, seizure. I had to get her to Hasbro Children's Hospital. His face changes. He's heard every excuse imaginable over 40 years on the bench, but this one sounds different. He asks for proof. She pulls a crumpled hospital parking stub from her purse. The clerk pulls up records. Traffic camera timestamp 2:47 p.m. Hospital admission 3:01 p.m. 14 minutes, 8.3 miles. The math works, barely. Caprio stares at the screen for 11 seconds of absolute silence. His hand hovers over the gavel. The gallery holds its breath. What he does next breaks protocol and goes viral within 48 hours. But the real story started 6 months earlier, with a pattern nobody else saw. By August 2017, Judge Frank Caprio had spent 4 decades in Providence Municipal Court asking the same question. What's your story? His father had come through Ellis Island with $17 and a suitcase. Frank grew up watching immigrants get crushed by systems that didn't care. So he built a different courtroom, no bailiff intimidation, no cold procedure. He treated defendants like neighbors, listened to their stories, and applied mercy when mercy made sense. The city loved him for it. But Caprio kept files nobody else bothered with. He tracked patterns, studied repeat offenders, noticed things. That summer, he noticed something odd. A spike in speeding tickets connected to hospital emergencies. All the same demographic, single mothers, low income, all the same hospital, Hasbro Children's, all presenting parking stubs as proof. He started collecting them in his desk drawer. Small detail. Nobody else was documenting it. By February 2018, he had 47 stubs. Each one told a story. Each one raised questions nobody was asking. Maria Santos worked 2 jobs, waitress at a diner on Federal Hill, weekend hostess at a hotel downtown. 2 daughters, 9 and 11. The older one, Isabella, had been diagnosed with epilepsy at age 6, controlled with medication mostly. Seizures were rare but terrifying when they came. On February 14, 2018, Valentine's Day, Maria was finishing her shift at the diner when her phone rang. The school nurse, voice shaking. Isabella collapsed during gym class, full tonic-clonic seizure, unresponsive. They'd called 911, but Maria was closer, 7 minutes away if she drove fast. She ran to her car, hands shaking, keys fumbling. The drive to Hasbro Children's Hospital was 8.3 miles through Providence traffic. She took Hope Street, hit the gas, blew through a yellow light at the school zone intersection. She didn't see the traffic camera. 68 miles per hour. The seizure stopped by the time she arrived. Isabella recovered fully. 3 weeks later, the ticket arrived in the mail, $250 she absolutely didn't have. Her friend at the diner told her, "Go see Judge Caprio. He's fair. He listens." Maria kept the parking stub, folded it carefully, and waited for her court date. Late January 2018, Caprio sat in his chambers reviewing 6 months of case files. 47 hospital-related speeding tickets, every single one dismissed or reduced. Mercy cases, emotional testimony, desperate parents. But something didn't sit right. He spread the files across his desk, looking for the pattern his gut told him was there. Timestamps. That was it. 14 to 17 minutes between traffic violation and hospital admission, every single time. Always the same range. He pulled out a city map, started marking intersections. The violations clustered around the same traffic camera on Hope Street. Right before the turn toward Hasbro Children's, he calculated distances, factored in traffic patterns, estimated speeds. The math checked out, barely. Possible, but tight. Too consistent to be random. Too desperate to be fabricated. He couldn't shake the feeling something was orchestrated here, though he couldn't see what or why. On February 27th, he circled one name in red ink. Maria Santos, scheduled for the next morning. He'd already pulled her traffic camera footage, already checked her hospital records. 14 minutes exactly. He went home that night unable to sleep, the parking stub from her file sitting on his nightstand. Morning of February 28th. The courtroom filled early. Caprio's show, caught in Providence, had become a local phenomenon. Real cases, real people, cameras capturing every moment. Maria Santos sat in the back row, clutching her purse, the parking stub inside. When her name was called, she walked to the podium on shaking legs. Caprio looked at her with the same warmth he showed everyone. "Tell me your story." She explained about Isabella, about the seizure, about racing from work to the hospital. Her voice cracked twice. She pulled out the parking stub. Timestamp clear, 3:01 p.m. admission. Caprio nodded, asked his clerk to pull the traffic camera footage. Routine verification. The footage loaded on the screen behind him. 2:47 p.m. violation, clean recording, 68 miles per hour in a 40 zone. School zone. He did the math out loud. For the cameras, for the record, 8.3 miles in 14 minutes. That's an average of 68 miles per hour. Possible. Barely. The gallery watched. This was the moment everyone would remember. His face changed, not because he thought she was lying, but because he realized she was telling the truth. And that truth revealed a much bigger question. How many other mothers had told him the exact same truth? Caprio dismissed the ticket. Maria cried, thanked him, walked out of the courtroom in disbelief. The video went viral that same afternoon. 2 million views in 24 hours, comments section exploding with opinions. But that night, Caprio couldn't let it go. He drove back to the courthouse, pulled all 47 hospital cases from his files, spread them across his desk. Every single one followed the same pattern. Same intersection, same hospital, same narrow time window. He called Mike Romano, an old friend at Providence PD, detective for 30 years. They'd grown up together on Federal Hill. Romano came to the courthouse at midnight, looked at the files, saw it immediately. "Frank, this is organized." Not fraud by the mothers. Something else. They spent 3 hours mapping the cases. Every address within an 8-mile radius, every violation funneled through that same traffic camera. Romano started pulling names from the hospital records. One name appeared on 31 of the 47 parking stubs. Teresa Moretti, parking attendant at Hasbro Children's Hospital. She validated parking, processed payments, worked the booth at the main entrance. Romano made a note. Talk to Teresa. Neither of them slept much that night. The pattern was too clean. Someone was coaching these mothers. The question was why. Teresa Moretti, 52 years old, had worked the parking booth at Hasbro Children's for 9 years. Quiet, reliable, everyone's favorite. She knew the regular doctors by name, recognized families who came back for treatments, always had a kind word for stressed parents. Romano pulled her employment records, cross-referenced them with the speeding ticket dates. Pattern clear as glass. On days when mothers received tickets, Teresa worked double shifts. He requested hospital security footage for 3 of those dates. The tapes showed her talking to distressed mothers in the parking lot, conversations lasting 2 to 3 minutes. No audio available, but body language told the story. Teresa leaning in, gesturing, mothers nodding, crying, clutching parking stubs. Romano interviewed 3 mothers whose cases Caprio had dismissed. All three said the same thing. Teresa helped me, told me to keep the stub, told me Judge Caprio would understand, told me to tell my story. One mother remembered Teresa's exact words. He's fair. He listens. Bring the parking stub and tell him the truth. Romano sat across from Teresa in an interview room at the precinct on March 8th, presented the evidence, asked her directly, "Are you running a ticket-fixing scheme?" She broke down immediately, crying, shaking, insisting she never took money, never profited, just wanted to help desperate mothers who were already drowning in medical bills. Romano didn't believe it was that simple. He pulled Teresa's bank records. No unusual deposits, no offshore accounts, no cash transactions that raised flags. He interviewed her again, this time with a prosecutor present. She stuck to her story. No kickbacks, no scheme, just compassion. But something in her testimony didn't fit. She mentioned a name Romano hadn't heard before. Dr. Patel told me it was the right thing to do. Dr. Rajesh Patel, ER attending physician, 12 years at Hasbro Children's. Romano pivoted immediately. He pulled Patel's shift schedule, cross-referenced it against the speeding ticket dates. Perfect overlap. Every single ticket happened during one of Patel's shifts. Romano requested a meeting with hospital administration, laid out what he'd found. The hospital's legal team panicked. Potential liability nightmare. Systematic coordination that could look like fraud even if the intent was benign. They brought Patel in for questioning on March 12th. He didn't deny anything. In fact, he admitted everything immediately, calmly, like he'd been waiting for someone to ask. He explained. In 2017, the hospital had been sued by a mother whose child died because the ambulance was delayed in traffic. Settlement was $800,000. Hospital policy changed. Prioritize parent. Transport. Get them to the ER fast. Patel saw mothers racing to the hospital, getting tickets, going bankrupt from fines on top of medical bills. So he started an informal program. Dr. Patel's program was simple. He coached Teresa to help mothers document their emergencies. Keep the parking stub, note the admission time, go see Judge Caprio. He knew Caprio's reputation. Mercy judge, immigrant son, someone who understood desperation. He genuinely believed he was helping families navigate an impossible system. Medical emergency, traffic ticket, mounting debt. What were they supposed to do? He never took money, never profited. But he created a systematic pipeline that, from the outside, looked exactly like fraud. Romano closed the investigation on March 15th. No criminal intent, no financial scheme. But the hospital administration was furious. Fire Teresa and Patel. Public backlash would be massive. Keep them. Liability disaster waiting to happen. The media caught wind of the story. Judge's kindness created ticket-fixing pipeline. The headline read, Providence PD came under pressure to charge someone, anyone, because optics mattered. Caprio found himself in the middle of an impossible situation. His mercy, his willingness to listen, had created an exploitable pattern. The very thing that made him beloved, his humanity, had been systematized into something that resembled corruption. On March 18th, he made a decision nobody expected. He called a press conference, invited every media outlet in Rhode Island, and sat down in front of cameras with the 47 parking stubs spread across the table in front of him. March 20th, 2018, Caprio stood in front of a packed room at Providence City Hall and admitted everything. He'd noticed the pattern 6 months earlier, triggered the investigation, worked with Romano to uncover what was happening. He defended Teresa and Dr. Patel. No fraud, just compassion without structure. Then he announced a new policy, drafted in coordination with the hospital and the police department, Hospital Emergency Affidavit System. Any parent who received a speeding ticket while racing to an emergency could present ER admission records within 48 hours. Automatic review. No need for a court hearing, no need to rely on a judge's mercy. Documentation and process. Clear rules. The city attorney stood beside him, confirmed the policy would go into effect immediately. Then Caprio did something unexpected. He invited Maria Santos to speak. She stood at the podium, daughter Isabella beside her, and thanked everyone. Thanked Teresa for helping her keep the parking stub. Thanked Dr. Patel for caring about families drowning in bills. Thanked Judge Caprio for seeing her as human. She cried again. The cameras captured it. The room stayed silent for a long moment after she finished. Romano, standing in the back, understood something important. The system had worked, but only because one judge was willing to see the pattern and ask why. The hospital kept Teresa and Dr. Patel, private reprimands, mandatory policy training, close supervision. Providence PD created emergency transport protocols for all hospitals in the city. 11 other mothers from the pattern came forward after the press conference, presented their cases, had their tickets reviewed and dismissed. But 3 mothers admitted they weren't actually emergencies. They'd lied after hearing other mothers succeeded. Those cases were reopened. Original fines reinstated plus court costs. The system worked, but it required accountability on both sides. Mercy without verification enabled exploitation. Verification without mercy crushed people who were already desperate. The balance was fragile. Caprio returned to his courtroom the following week. Caught in Providence viewership exploded. 18 million followers on Facebook, clips shared across the country. The Maria Santos case became the most watched episode in the show's history. People loved the story. Judge with a heart, mother racing to save her daughter, system that adapted instead of crushing everyone involved. But Caprio kept the original parking stub in his desk drawer, circled in red ink, a reminder. He was 78 years old now, 40 years on the bench. He'd always believed in mercy, but mercy without structure created exploitation. Compassion without accountability enabled fraud. The best system wasn't the strictest or the kindest. It was the one that knew when to stop and ask why. By summer 2018, the new emergency affidavit system had processed 43 cases. 39 were verified emergencies. Tickets dismissed. 4 were fraudulent. Fines doubled for lying under oath. The system worked because it was clear, fast, and fair. No more relying on a judge's mood. No more gambling on whether your story sounded believable. Documentation and process. Maria Santos returned to work at the diner. Isabella's seizures remained. Controlled, the hospital parking stub stayed folded in her wallet. She told friends about it sometimes. The day she stood in front of cameras, shaking, certain she'd be crushed by a fine she couldn't afford. The judge who listened. The system that adapted. A year later, in February 2019, she returned to the courthouse. Not for a ticket. She wanted to thank Caprio in person, away from cameras. She brought a card, homemade, signed by both daughters. Inside the card, she'd tucked her original parking stub, the one she'd kept all this time. She'd framed it at home with the dismissal order, hung it in her kitchen. She told Caprio it reminded Isabella that mercy exists, but truth matters more. That you can't build a life on lies, even sympathetic ones. That the system isn't perfect, but sometimes it bends when it needs to. Caprio kept Maria's card on his desk for months. Eventually, he framed the parking stub she'd given him, hung it in his chambers next to the other 47 he'd collected during the investigation. Visitors asked about them sometimes. He'd explain the whole story. The pattern, the investigation, Teresa and Dr. Patel, the press conference, the new policy. Most people focused on the happy ending. Tickets dismissed, families helped, system improved. But Caprio always ended with the same observation. 3 mothers lied. They heard about the others and thought they could get away with it. The parking stub became a ticket to fraud instead of proof of emergency. That tension never fully resolved. Mercy invited exploitation. Strictness crushed the innocent. The only solution was constant vigilance, checking records, verifying stories, building systems that were both fair and accountable. It required work. It required judges willing to see patterns and ask uncomfortable questions. It required hospitals and police departments willing to adapt policies instead of hiding behind procedure. By late 2019, Court in Providence had become one of the most popular courtroom shows in America. Millions of viewers tuning in to watch an elderly Italian judge treat people with dignity. But the viewers didn't see the hours Caprio spent reviewing files, checking records, looking for patterns that signaled something was wrong. The parking stub Maria Santos pulled from her purse on February 28, 2018, became more than proof of an emergency. It became a symbol of something harder to define. The gap between mercy and accountability, between compassion and exploitation, between a system that listens and a system that enables fraud. Caprio understood that gap better than most. He'd spent 40 years walking it, trying to be fair without being naive, compassionate without being foolish. The viral video everyone watched showed 11 seconds of silence, a judge staring at a screen, processing information, deciding what to do. But those 11 seconds contained a lifetime of experience. 10,000 cases, 10,000 stories, 10,000 moments where he had to decide, is this person telling the truth? Does the truth even matter? What happens if I show mercy to someone who doesn't deserve it? What happens if I deny mercy to someone who desperately needs it? The parking stubs on his wall answered some of those questions. 47 mothers, 47 emergencies, 3 liars, 1 informal system that looked like fraud but started as compassion. The system adapted, policies changed, but the core tension remained. Human systems require human judgment, and human judgment is always imperfect. Some parking stubs prove innocence, others prove we weren't asking the right questions. Caprio's legacy wasn't the viral videos, or the millions of followers, or the heartwarming clips shared across social media. His legacy was simpler. He paid attention. He noticed patterns when nobody else was looking. He asked why when everyone else accepted surface explanations. He built systems that balanced mercy with accountability, compassion with verification. The parking stub Maria Santos gave him sits in a frame on his desk now, next to the 47 others. When asked about them, he says the same thing every time. The best system isn't the strictest or the kindest, it's the one that knows when to stop and ask why. The mothers kept coming to his courtroom. Some told the truth, some lied. He listened to all of them, checked their records, made his decisions. The cameras kept rolling, the viewers kept watching, and the parking stubs kept piling up, small pieces of paper that proved over and over that human systems only work when humans care enough to see what's actually happening.